Welcome back to Mr. John Stories, where life's most powerful lessons come wrapped in unforgettable tales. Please hit the subscribe button so we can keep sharing inspiring stories like this with you on YouTube. The lunch rush at Hillside Diner in Tallahassee was in full swing. Plates sliding across counters, conversations bouncing between booths, and the soft hum of gospel music coming from a tiny radio perched near the register. It was the kind of place where people waved at neighbors they knew and smiled at the ones they didn't. Nicole moved between tables with practiced ease, refilling sweet tea, greeting regulars, and wiping down tables with the calm grace of someone who had mastered doing three things at once. Her apron was worn, her steps steady, her mind focused on making it through another day peacefully. But peace ended the moment Lewis walked in. His presence didn't fit the room. Tailored suit, shiny watch, a confidence that stretched too wide across his face. The kind of confidence that usually worked everywhere he went. He walked straight to the counter where Nicole stood, setting down a leather wallet worth more than her monthly rent. Nicole greeted him with a polite smile. "Welcome in. What can I get for you today?" Lewis leaned forward, glancing at her name badge with a smirk that didn't even try to hide itself. "Nicole," he said, rolling her name slowly. "Let me ask you something." She paused, one hand still holding a towel. "Yes, sir?" His voice rose loud enough for the closest tables to hear. The diner froze. Forks stopped midair. A little boy turned in his booth to look up at his mother. Two old men by the window nearly choked on their biscuits. Nicole didn't rush. She set the towel aside, lifted her chin slightly, and looked Lewis straight in the eyes, the way someone does when they've been underestimated too many times to be rattled by it again. "Darling viewers, has anyone ever sized you up based on your job? Has anyone ever mistaken your humility for a lack of intelligence? Because if you have, you're about to understand exactly how Nicole felt in this moment." Nicole stepped closer to the counter. Her voice didn't rise. She didn't match his volume or his arrogance. She didn't need to. Her words were precise, sharp enough to cut cleanly. "Funny you say that," she replied, eyes steady. "Because with all your billions, you still don't know the first thing about real wealth." It was as if the room exhaled all at once. Someone whispered, "Lord." Another customer covered her mouth in shock. A server in the back ducked behind the drink station to hide a grin. Lewis's smirk fell apart. His confidence wobbled. He straightened his tie like he suddenly realized it didn't fit as well as he thought. Nicole didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply returned to wiping the counter, as if she hadn't just shattered a billionaire's ego in front of an entire diner. So what exactly did she say that destroyed a billionaire's ego and changed both of their lives forever? Stay with me, because this moment was only the beginning. Darling viewers, before we go deeper into this unforgettable encounter, please take a moment to like this video and comment "Respect Matters" below. It helps YouTube share this story with more wonderful people. And trust me, you'll want to hear every second of what happens next. If you're here for the first time, thank you so much for joining the family. Please hit the subscribe button so we can keep sharing inspiring stories like this with you on YouTube. The moment the diner calmed from the tension Lewis created, the story turns back in time. Earlier that same day, before the billionaire ever walked in, before ego and pride clashed at the counter. It begins with Nicole unlocking the side door of Hillside Diner, stepping into a place that had become a second home to her. The morning light slid across the checkerboard floors, and the soft hum of the kitchen fans greeted her like familiar voices. She set her purse in the back, glanced briefly at the tiny magnets on the staff fridge, pictures of her children grinning in their school uniforms, then tightened her apron with the practiced tug of someone who had done this for years. By the time the first customer shuffled in, Nicole already had coffee brewing, cutlery rolled, and the syrup bottles refilled. She moved with a gentle rhythm, offering good mornings to the older gentlemen who always arrived before sunrise, and to the college kids who stumbled in after late-night study sessions. In Tallahassee, people knew her, not because she was loud or flashy, but because she made everyone feel seen without asking for anything in return. A church elder stopped at the counter to thank her again for volunteering at last weekend's charity table. Nicole smiled and brushed it off lightly. It was nothing, she said, though she had stood there for hours in the Florida heat. That was the kind of woman she was, steady, giving, and too humble to point out how much she actually did. She floated between tables with that warm composure Tallahassee folks admired, never rushing, never snapping, even when she had every reason to. A group of college students fretted over an exam. She placed their plates down and told them softly, "Eat first, stress later. Your brain can't think on an empty stomach." They laughed, relieved by her calmness. A tired mother bounced a restless toddler on her knee. Nicole quietly brought extra napkins and offered a small distraction, a spoon the baby could bang without breaking anything. The woman mouthed "thank you," and Nicole responded with a nod, her smile reassuring and kind. This was Nicole's daily life, not glamorous, not easy, but full. She handled everything with a grace that seemed effortless, though anyone who looked closely would see how much strength lived beneath that calm exterior. During a brief lull, she counted the tips she'd earned so far. Not much, but enough to start sketching out which bills she'd cover first. She did this without complaint, without resentment. Her budgeting skills were sharp, shaped by necessity, and often the reason she managed to stay afloat when times got tight. Outside the window, a line of luxury cars glided past on their way toward the Capital District. Nicole watched them only for a moment, not because she wanted to be in one, but because she knew the kind of people who sat behind those tinted windows. People who thought their money gave them height. People who assumed everyone else looked up to them. She wasn't impressed. She wasn't intimidated. But she was aware. Her world and theirs had always existed side by side in Tallahassee, so close they nearly touched, yet never truly intersecting. At least, not until that afternoon. As the lunch hour approached, the diner filled quickly. Plates clattered, customers waved for refills, conversations crisscrossed the room. Nicole moved with greater urgency, balancing 4 tasks at once without losing her composure. No one noticed the faint shift in her expression when the bell above the door chimed. She didn't look immediately. She only felt that tiny, inexplicable awareness a person gets when something significant has stepped into their day. Something that will change more than just the direction of their afternoon. This was the moment before the storm, before Lewis's arrogance walked through the door, before his words struck the match that set the entire diner buzzing. Nicole didn't know it yet, but the life she had carefully held together with patience and quiet strength was about to collide with a man who had everything, except the wisdom she carried effortlessly. While Nicole moved through her morning with patience and purpose, across town another morning was unfolding, one shaped by power, pressure, and a man who believed the world should shift to accommodate his footsteps. Lewis stood on the balcony of his high-rise penthouse overlooking Tallahassee's canopy of trees, sipping a dark roast coffee that had been ground, brewed, and served by someone he barely spoke to. Below him, the roads flowed toward the Capital District, a reminder of the influence he wielded in both business and political circles. But the view didn't soothe him today. He tapped the edge of his cup impatiently, replaying a call from one of his board members who had dared to question one of his decisions. Lewis didn't like being questioned. His entire life operated on one principle: if he said it, it must be right. Minutes later, he was on the golf course at the Capital City Country Club, swinging harder than necessary. His shot sliced to the right, then to the left, each one worse than the last. His irritation grew with every missed swing. New day. Same incompetence, he muttered under his breath, frustrated that the world refused to cooperate with him the way money usually did. His assistant approached quietly, holding a tablet filled with meetings, requests, and reminders he hadn't yet acknowledged. "You have a lunch break free today," the assistant said carefully. "Maybe visit that diner on Appalachia Parkway, the one with the chicken and waffles you liked. That place? The food is good, but the service is slow. And the people—" He didn't finish the sentence, but his tone said everything. Still, he was hungry, and avoiding the downtown crowd appealed to him. Besides, walking into a simple diner gave him a certain thrill, like stepping into a world where he didn't belong but could observe from above. He returned to his office first, a sleek top-floor space with glass walls, expensive art, and the quiet hum of a city bowing beneath his productivity. He held a brief meeting, if raising his voice and cutting people off counted as a meeting, then dismissed everyone and grabbed his keys. Clear my schedule for an hour, he told his assistant. Louis enjoyed the silence that followed him down the elevator. Silence meant control. Silence meant no one was challenging him. Silence meant he could think without interference. But beneath that calm surface was something he didn't acknowledge. A quiet fear that the people around him respected his bank account far more than they respected him. Still, he buried those thoughts under the same armor he wore every day. Arrogance polished to perfection. His car glided down toward the diner, the polished body catching sunlight as he passed neighborhoods he barely noticed. Houses tucked behind oak trees, local shops, small families walking together, none of it registered as real. To him, they were scenery, background noise, people living smaller lives, without ambition, without reach. He didn't mean to be cruel. He simply never questioned the perspective he carried. When he turned into the diner parking lot, his mood was already set on superiority. He straightened his jacket, checked his reflection in the rearview mirror, and stepped out like a man entering a place that should feel grateful to have him. The diner buzzed with lunch-hour chatter as he walked in. Some customers recognized him. Not personally, but they knew the type. Polished, wealthy, important. He fed off the glances, the whispers. He liked being noticed. Louis approached the counter with a smooth, confident stride, unaware that the calm woman wiping it down would be the first person in years to speak to him without fear, without hesitation, and without caring who he was. His world, built on authority and comfort, was about to collide with hers, built on resilience and truth, and neither one of them saw it coming. When Louis stepped into Hillside Diner, he walked in as if the air should part for him. His cologne lingered behind him like a signature. Customers looked up briefly, some out of curiosity, others out of instinct. Nicole didn't look right away. She was in the middle of wiping down a table near the counter, moving with her usual focus. He cleared his throat loudly as he approached, a small gesture meant to demand attention. Nicole turned, offering him the same warm professionalism she gave everyone. "Good afternoon," she said. "What can I get started for you?" Louis didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her the same way he studied business proposals, quickly, critically, and with no intention of seeing more than he wanted to see. He took in her uniform, her name badge, the towel still in her hand. A smirk curved across his face. "So, Nicole," he began, leaning one elbow on the counter, as if he were settling into a mock interview. "You work here full-time?" Her expression didn't shift. "Yes, sir. Can I take your order?" But he wasn't interested in ordering. "Not yet. And you must deal with money all day," he said loudly enough for people nearby to hear. "Counting change, keeping track of tips." He paused, letting his voice stretch. "Tell me, do you give financial advice too, or is counting tips the extent of your expertise?" The words dropped like a weight in the middle of the diner. Conversation stopped instantly. Chairs stopped scooting. A fork froze halfway to a customer's mouth. Nicole didn't react at first. She simply set the towel down, fingers steady. She had heard rude comments before, but this one had a tone to it. A tone of someone who believed their bank account made them untouchable. She lifted her gaze to him slowly. Louis waited, fully expecting a nervous laugh or a flustered explanation. He thrived on moments where people scrambled to appear smaller around him. In his world, that was the natural order. Nicole didn't scramble. She stepped a little closer, not aggressively, but with a calm that made every person in the room lean in. "Sir," she said softly, "I'm just trying to make sure everyone gets their lunch today. But if you need help understanding something, I can check today's interest rates on my phone. Since I have one too." A few customers stifled laughter. Someone coughed to hide a grin. Louis blinked, taken aback. She wasn't supposed to answer like that. She wasn't supposed to stand so steady. He straightened his tie, pretending her comment hadn't landed. "I was joking," he said, chuckling awkwardly. "Relax." She had lived too long, seen too much, to let ignorance pass without a lesson. She rested both hands on the counter, her voice low but clear. "Relaxing is easy," she said. "What's harder is pretending not to notice when someone tries to belittle you." The room tightened. Louis's cheeks flushed, redder than he wanted anyone to notice. Nicole continued, her tone never rising, never wavering. "Funny thing is, You're talking about money like it makes you wiser, but with all your billions. She paused, letting the silence sharpen her words. You still don't know the first thing about real wealth. Lewis froze. His confidence, so carefully constructed, wobbled right in front of him. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. There was no clever retort, no smug chuckle to rescue him. Nicole's words didn't just hit him, they rearranged something in him. She didn't gloat. She didn't lean back triumphantly. She simply returned to the towel she had set aside, wiping a small circle on the counter, as if she hadn't just shifted the entire energy in the room. Lewis remained standing there, undone in a way he had never experienced. A waitress, someone he assumed knew little of his world, had met him head-on and spoken to him with the kind of truth no one in his circle ever dared to offer. And for the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar. Nicole walked away to take another order, leaving him alone with the weight of his own words. This moment, brief, unexpected, and powerful, was the spark that would change everything for both of them. For several long seconds after Nicole walked away, the diner stayed strangely quiet. Not silent, just aware. Aware that something real had cracked open in that moment. Aware that a man who usually walked through life untouched had finally met a voice he couldn't brush aside. Lewis remained at the counter, shoulders stiff, eyes fixed on the spot where Nicole had been standing only seconds before. He had been challenged in boardrooms, questioned by investors, and even criticized by journalists. But none of those encounters ever left him standing this still. None of them had landed with the weight of a simple, honest truth spoken by a woman he hadn't expected to matter. He didn't know why it bothered him. Maybe because her tone wasn't harsh. Maybe because she didn't yell. Maybe because she didn't seem impressed by him. Not one bit. And deep down, beneath the layers of confidence he wore like armor, something small and unfamiliar pressed against his chest. A feeling he couldn't name, but one he didn't like. Nicole, meanwhile, continued working without a single sign of ruffled emotion. She took orders, poured drinks, and moved through the diner with the same grace she had when the day started. But every so often someone whispered to her, with a barely hidden smile, "That was something. You told him. Good for you, girl." She brushed off their comments quietly. For her, it wasn't about embarrassing anyone. It was about preserving her dignity. Something she refused to let anyone step on, no matter who they were or what they owned. Still, there was a flicker of something beneath her steady appearance. Not regret. She had spoken the truth. But a small, curious thought she couldn't quite shake. Why did a man like that feel the need to look down on someone like her? And what kind of emptiness pushes someone to speak that way? Lewis finally gathered himself enough to speak. "I'll take the chicken and waffles," he muttered. It came out flat. Unsteady, a man no longer speaking from a throne but from the ground he didn't expect to land on. Nicole nodded politely and placed the order with the kitchen. She didn't spare him a second glance. For the rest of his meal, Lewis barely touched his phone. He didn't scroll. He didn't answer emails. He didn't bark orders at anyone. He just sat there, staring at his plate, replaying words he never imagined would linger this long. With all your billions, you still don't know the first thing about real wealth. Those words followed him out the door when he finally left. They followed him to his car. They followed him into the silence of the afternoon. He didn't know it yet, but that single moment, born from pride, met with truth, was about to pull him into a story he couldn't control. A story that would expose the emptiness he'd been hiding. A story that would show him a woman whose strength outshined the money he had built his life around. A story that neither of them were prepared for, but both of them needed. Darling viewers, take a breath. What you just witnessed was only the spark. Stay with us, because the journey between Nicole and Lewis is filled with lessons, tension, humor, and a kind of connection that neither saw coming. If you haven't already, please like this video and comment, "Respect matters" below. It helps this story reach more hearts. Before the moment that shook the diner and embarrassed a billionaire, the day had begun like any other for Nicole. Long before Lewis walked through those glass doors with his expensive confidence and sharp tongue, she had already been awake, already moving, already carrying the weight of responsibilities he couldn't imagine. The Florida sun had barely risen when she parked her car outside Hillside Diner. a small family-run spot on Appalachia Parkway. The sky had that early blue tint, the kind that sits quietly before the heat takes over. Nicole pushed open the side door, letting herself into the familiar scent of brewed coffee and warm biscuits. She hung her purse on its usual hook in the back, her eyes briefly resting on the magnets on the fridge, her children smiling wide in their school pictures. Their tiny faces were her constant drive, the quiet strength behind every shift she worked. She tied her apron around her waist, smoothing the fabric with a steady hand. It was the same routine she had done for years, but she approached it with renewed focus each day. She checked the register, counted bills, set out fresh napkins, and made sure every table had the right condiments. Her movements were calm, confident, and full of intention. Soon the first customers began to walk in. State workers grabbing breakfast before heading downtown, construction workers stopping by for quick morning plates, and older regulars who seemed to know everyone in Tallahassee. Nicole greeted each person by name, or with a warm, familiar nod. "Mornin', y'all," she said gently, her voice carrying the subtle rhythm of her hometown. "Morning, Nicole," an older woman replied, lifting her coffee cup. "You made the grits today?" "Yes, ma'am. Creamy, just like you like 'em." Within minutes, the diner found its rhythm. The morning bustle rose like a gentle tide, chairs scooting, silverware clinking, conversations weaving through the room. Nicole moved through it with ease, taking orders, checking on tables, refilling sweet tea without being asked. Even when the stress of life tugged at her thoughts, bills, school forms, the weekend schedule for her kids, she never let it show. She carried herself with a grace that seemed to steady the room. A small group of college students slipped into a booth, their backpacks sliding onto the seats beside them. They looked exhausted, half awake, and buried in notes. When Nicole reached their table, one of them rubbed his eyes and sighed. "We're drowning, ma'am." "Midterms." Nicole chuckled softly. "Eat first," she said. "Your brain can't think right on an empty stomach. You all want the breakfast special?" They nodded gratefully, their shoulders easing as she walked away. She had that effect on people, calm in her voice, reassurance in her smile. A moment later, a mother with a restless toddler entered the diner. The child squirmed in her arms, fussing loudly. Nicole approached with a comforting expression. "Here," she said, picking up a spoon from the table. "Let him play with this. Keeps the little ones busy without making a mess." The mother laughed in relief. "Thank you. You always know what to do." Nicole shrugged modestly. "Just a little practice." These interactions were small, but they painted the picture of who she truly was. A woman grounded in community, strengthened by routine, and sustained by her roots. She had grown up in Tallahassee's black neighborhoods, spent Sundays at Bethel Baptist Church, volunteered at community events, and never lost the sense of responsibility that her upbringing instilled in her. People relied on her warmth more than she ever realized. As the morning passed, the diner grew louder. The kitchen clattered with pans, orders shouted from cooks, and customers filled every booth. Nicole wiped sweat from her forehead, but she kept moving with determination. Inside her apron pocket, she felt the small folded papers she kept tucked away. School reminders for her kids, a grocery list, and a mental note of which bills needed attention. She had handled hardship quietly, turning struggle into structure. It wasn't easy, but she never let her children feel the weight of it. Near the counter, one of her co-workers nudged her gently. "Girl, you know you're the reason half these people keep coming back," they teased. "Your charm is dangerous." Nicole laughed softly. "If charm paid the bills, I'd be rich by now." The co-worker snorted. "You got more sense than half the folks with real money." Nicole shook her head with a smile and moved on to the next table. Outside, a series of high-end cars rolled by on their way to the Capitol area. She watched for a second, not with longing, but with an understanding born from years of living close to wealth yet far from its privileges. She respected ambition, but she didn't envy excess. Her life was rooted in something deeper than status. As she refilled a glass of sweet tea, the bell above the diner door chimed. Nicole didn't look up right away. She was busy balancing plates, timing orders, and helping customers. But that soft chime, so ordinary, so harmless, was the sound marking the moment her world and Lewis's world were about to collide. The day wasn't unusual. The routine wasn't new. But the man who walked through that door would disrupt everything she thought she knew about her strength, and everything he thought he knew about his own. While Nicole moved through her morning with warmth and community on her side, the other half of this story began with a very different rhythm. The rhythm of a man who believed the sun rose each day simply to illuminate his accomplishments. Lewis began his morning perched high above Tallahassee, in a penthouse that looked down on the city like a quiet judge. His curtains drew back automatically the moment his alarm chimed, revealing a skyline wrapped in soft light. The large windows reflected his perfectly pressed shirt, his polished shoes, and the carefully controlled expression he wore every day, whether he was pleased or furious. He sipped coffee prepared by someone he could never remember by name. The drink was strong, imported, expensive, everything he believed he deserved. But even as he tasted it, the flavor felt dull. His thoughts were already racing toward business calls, investor updates, and the endless competition he chose to surround himself with. A notification buzzed through his phone. A board member questioning one of his decisions. Again, Lewis's jaw tightened. He hated questions. He hated doubts. He set the mug down harder than necessary, walked out to the balcony and stared toward the Capital District. He liked being close enough to see the political center of Florida, a reminder that his influence reached far beyond finance. People respected his name, his money, and his presence. Or at least, that was what he told himself. By mid-morning, he was at the Capital City Country Club, swinging his golf club with impatience. The grass was trimmed to perfection, the sky above him clear. Everything in this environment was built for comfort and leisure, yet Lewis felt neither. He swung too hard and the ball veered sharply off course. Ridiculous, he muttered, annoyed with both the ball and himself. He took another swing. Another failure. Each miss chipped away at his inflated calm. His assistant stood quietly near the golf cart, holding a tablet filled with appointments. They knew better than to interrupt him when he was irritated. Finally, Lewis exhaled sharply and waved them over. "What's next?" he asked. "You have a midday break," the assistant replied carefully. "If you want lunch, there's that small spot on Apalachee Parkway you've visited before." Lewis raised an eyebrow. "The place with the waffles." "Yes, sir." He pretended to consider it, even though he already knew he would go. The food was simple but good, and there was something he liked about walking into a room where no one had been scheduled to flatter him. Still, he scoffed lightly. "Fine. I'll go. Clear the rest for an hour." "Yes, sir." On the way back to his office, he moved through the hallways like a man expecting the world to shift around him. People stepped aside. Greetings were brief and cautious. No one dared tell him his tone was sharp or his temper too quick. They treated him as someone powerful, untouchable, and he depended on that. But that dependence came with a quiet truth he refused to face. Fear and respect felt the same to him because he had never experienced genuine respect. Back in his office, he skimmed through paperwork with mechanical precision. He dismissed 2 people, rushed another meeting, and ignored 3 suggestions that might have helped his company. He thought confidence meant never bending, never reconsidering, never acknowledging that someone else's idea might be better. His life was polished, structured, and lonely. Just before noon, he grabbed his keys and headed to the elevator. The silence inside felt heavy, but he welcomed it. Silence never challenged him. Silence never corrected him. Silence never forced him to look inward. His car eased onto the road, leaving the luxury-lined streets he knew so well. As he approached the diner district, he saw smaller storefronts, older buildings, and families walking together. He barely noticed them. He wasn't accustomed to looking where meaning lived, only where influence mattered. When he pulled into the parking lot of Hillside Diner, he straightened his jacket, checked his reflection in the mirror, and allowed the familiar pride to settle across his features. He stepped inside expecting a quiet lunch, and a world that moved out of his way. He did not expect to meet a woman unmoved by his presence. He did not expect to encounter a voice that cut through the facade he'd built. He did not expect the balance of power to shift so quickly, so sharply, so cleanly. But everything that followed, every word, every reaction, every internal shake, began with this moment. The moment he walked into a diner believing he owned every room he entered. He had no idea someone inside was about to hand him a truth he'd never been willing to hear. The bell above the diner door chimed, a soft sound that blended into the midday noise. Nicole didn't look up at first. She was balancing 2 plates, chicken melt in one hand, a club sandwich in the other, while answering a customer's question about refills. The diner hummed with energy, the kind of energy that came with Tallahassee lunch rushes, state workers, students, families, all talking over one another in a comforting wave of sound. But when Nicole turned from the table, she caught sight of him. Lewis. He stood at the entrance as if stepping onto a stage, his posture straight, his suit sharp, his expression carrying the same assurance he wore every day. Conversations softened, not because people knew him personally, but because they knew the type. Wealth moved through the room differently, even when uninvited. Nicole didn't react beyond a quick blink. Customers of all kinds came through those doors. She set the plates down, gave her usual warm smile, and made her way back to the counter. Lewis approached with a measured stride, scanning the room before settling his eyes on her. He seemed almost bored, as if this moment were an inconvenience he had chosen to tolerate. "Welcome in," Nicole said, her tone polite but focused. "Table or counter today?" "Counter," he replied, dropping his leather wallet onto the surface as though he were placing a claim on the space. Nicole grabbed her notepad. "What can I get started for you?" Instead of answering, Lewis leaned forward, studying her the way a man studied numbers on a screen, detached, assessing, certain of his ability to judge with accuracy. "You work here full-time?" he asked, his voice carrying just enough volume to draw attention. Nicole kept her expression steady. "Yes, sir." He gave a slow, almost performative nod. "So you must deal with money all day." A few nearby customers paused. The way he said it didn't sound like a compliment. Nicole didn't respond, waiting for him to continue. Lewis's smirk widened as he lifted one eyebrow. "Tell me," he said, his tone dipped in condescension, "do you give financial advice too? Or is counting tips the extent of your expertise?" It was incredible how quickly a room could change. Plates stilled, voices dipped. Even the kitchen seemed to pause mid-clatter. Nicole exhaled softly through her nose, more out of disappointment than surprise. She had met men like him before, men who judged without knowledge, who mistook money for brilliance and hard work for failure. She set her notepad down carefully. "I'm just here to make sure folks get their lunch," she said calmly. "But if you're looking for something specific, I can help you with your order." Lewis chuckled, dismissing her answer with a wave of his hand. "Relax. It's a joke." But it wasn't funny, not to her, and not to anyone standing close enough to hear the tone behind his words. Nicole stepped closer, not aggressively, but with the quiet confidence of someone who refused to let disrespect settle unchecked. "What's harder," she said gently, "is pretending you didn't mean it." Lewis blinked. His smirk faltered for just a moment. Nicole continued, her voice even, her eyes steady. "You look at this job and assume it tells you everything about me. But the truth is, it says more about you." A soft gasp rippled through the diner. Lewis straightened, taken aback. "Excuse me?" Nicole didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice. She simply spoke with a truth he wasn't prepared for. "You talk about money like it makes you wiser," she said. "But with all your billions." She let the silence hold for a heartbeat, just long enough. "You still don't know the first thing about real wealth." Someone at a booth whispered, "Oh, wow." Another customer covered their mouth. 2 college students exchanged wide-eyed looks. Lewis's face shifted in a way he couldn't hide. Something inside him buckled. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. No clever retort. No quick dismissal. Nothing. Nicole didn't smirk. She didn't savor the moment. She simply picked up her notepad again. "Now," she said gently, "what would you like for lunch?" It was the first time in years that someone had spoken to him without fear, without hesitation, without adjusting themselves to flatter his ego. Lewis swallowed, suddenly aware of the room watching him. "I'll take the chicken and waffles," he managed. Nicole nodded, wrote it down, and moved to the kitchen window. She didn't look back. Louis sat at the counter, but the confidence he walked in with had slipped out of his reach. His mind replayed her words, calm, clear, and sharp enough to pierce his polished exterior. For the first time in a very long time, he felt uncertain. Darling viewers, if this moment caught your attention the way it caught the entire diner's, take a second to like this video and comment "Respect Matters" below. More viewers will see this story because of you. Louis didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. A single moment of truth had shaken him, and the path ahead would shake far more than his pride. Louis had always believed he understood power. He believed authority came from money, influence, and the careful distance he kept from the people beneath him. But as he drove away from Hillside Diner, a single sentence from Nicole echoed through his mind, louder than any investor's critique or board member's disagreement. "With all your billions, you still don't know the first thing about real wealth." He gripped the steering wheel tightly. His chest tightened in a way he didn't have a name for. It wasn't anger, at least not entirely. It wasn't embarrassment, though a piece of him recognized that sting. Whatever it was, it made it impossible for him to focus on anything else. When he arrived back at his office, he walked through the lobby with his usual composed stride, but his assistant immediately sensed something was off. Louis didn't bark instructions. He didn't dismiss anyone. He didn't demand updates. He simply walked past his assistant and sat at his desk, staring at nothing. A full minute passed before the assistant spoke softly. "Sir, everything all right?" Louis blinked, as if waking from a trance. "Fine," he said quickly. "I'm fine." But he wasn't. The assistant held the tablet against their chest, trying to read the sudden shift. "Did something happen at lunch?" Louis hesitated. He rarely hesitated. No, nothing important, yet he continued staring at his desk, fingers tapping lightly on the smooth surface. He replayed the moment when the entire diner went quiet. The way Nicole didn't raise her voice, didn't insult him, didn't show fear. She simply told the truth. Truth had power. Truth he couldn't buy. Truth he wasn't used to hearing. His assistant cleared their throat gently. "You have a meeting in 15 minutes. "I'm not going," Louis muttered. The assistant blinked. "Sir," I said, "I'm not going." That alone was unusual. Louis had never skipped a meeting without a calculated reason. But today he didn't have the energy to face a room full of people pretending to respect him. He stood suddenly. "Reschedule everything. I need to handle something." "Of course, sir. Should I prepare the conference line or—" "No." He grabbed his keys. "It's personal." His assistant watched him walk away again, utterly baffled. As Louis drove off for the second time that day, the city stretched out around him. Palm trees swaying, traffic flowing, students heading toward campus. Yet none of it grounded him. His mind was stuck in a diner with wood-paneled walls, where a woman with steady hands and patient eyes had spoken to him in a way no one had dared to in years. Was she wrong? No, that was the problem. Money had been his shield. The thing he believed made him superior, untouchable. But Nicole had pierced through that belief effortlessly, not by mocking him, not by insulting him, but by naming the emptiness he ignored. He just knew he needed to see her again. He told himself it was because she had challenged him, because he wanted to regain control of the situation, because he needed to prove something, though he wasn't sure what. He parked in the same spot as before, the diner sign flickering gently in the afternoon sun. He took a breath, adjusted his jacket, and stepped inside. The lunch rush had ended. The diner was quieter now, with only a few scattered customers finishing their meals. Nicole was at the counter, wiping it down just as she had been the first time he saw her. She looked up briefly, her expression unreadable. Louis forced a composed smile. "Back again," he said lightly. Nicole nodded once. "Looks that way." He approached the counter, pretending to scan the menu. "I'm here for business reasons," he said, as if announcing something important. Nicole raised an eyebrow. "Business?" "Yes," he lied quickly. "I'm exploring potential investments, community-based, local establishments. All that. He blinked. What? No, Her lips curved subtly, the closest thing to a tease. It's okay. Folks come here for comfort food all the time. Doesn't make you special. Her tone wasn't rude. It wasn't mocking. It simply disarmed him. Again, Lewis cleared his throat. Well, I suppose another order wouldn't hurt. Nicole wrote it down with the same calm professionalism she always had. But as she walked away, Lewis felt something he didn't expect. A pull. A curiosity. A sense that he was stepping towards something unfamiliar. He didn't know it yet, but this return visit would be the beginning of the shift he had needed for years. A shift he never planned for and couldn't control. Nicole returned from placing Lewis's order at the kitchen window, her expression calm as she wiped her hands on her apron. She didn't rush toward him, didn't act flustered, didn't adjust herself the way people usually did when standing in front of someone with his level of wealth. She simply moved with the same composed rhythm she carried through every shift. Lewis watched her from the counter, trying, and failing, to decipher what made her different. He had met polished executives, fierce competitors, public figures, and wealthy donors. He had argued with powerful personalities and bent entire rooms to his will. Yet this woman, wiping down a counter in a modest diner, carried a steadiness he couldn't shake. Nicole approached the counter with a fresh glass of water. "Here," she said, setting it down. "It's hot out today." "Thank you," Lewis replied, hoping his tone sounded natural. It didn't. Even he could hear the stiffness. Nicole gave a small nod and turned to check on another customer. Lewis watched her for a moment, then forced himself to look away. He wasn't used to being the one caught off balance. A few minutes passed before she returned with a refill pitcher. As she reached to top off his glass, he attempted a casual tone. "So, do you always talk to customers like that?" She poured slowly, not looking at him. "Like what?" "You know," he made a vague gesture with his hand. "Direct." She finally glanced at him, her expression neutral. "Sir, you came in here earlier and tried to talk down to me in front of a crowd. You asked for direct." Lewis rubbed the back of his neck. "Fair point." Nicole offered a faint hint of amusement. "Good to know you agree." Her comeback disarmed him again, and he couldn't help the small laugh that escaped. Not mocking, not forced, just genuine. He wasn't sure he could remember the last time someone made him laugh without trying to impress him. "Look," Lewis tried again, leaning slightly forward. "About earlier," she cut him off gently. "It's done. I'm not holding it over your head. Just treat people better." Her simplicity almost startled him. No lecture. No dramatics. Just truth. She walked off to check on another table before he could reply. Lewis watched her glide between booths, noticing how customers lit up when she approached. Even the tired mother from earlier seemed more relaxed when Nicole stopped by with a smile. There was something magnetic about her, but not in the way he was used to. It wasn't dramatic beauty or polished charm, though she was certainly beautiful. It was the way she anchored people, the way she made the diner feel less chaotic just by being present. "So," he said, attempting a lighter tone, "am I banned from this place after today? Or do I get a second chance?" Nicole raised a brow. "You planning to insult anyone else?" "No," he said quickly, "definitely not." She crossed her arms loosely. "Then you're fine." He exhaled, relieved in a way he didn't expect. "Good, because I may come back again." "For waffles?" she asked. He hesitated. "Sure, for waffles." She didn't challenge the lie. Instead, she gave him a small smile, the first real smile she had directed at him, and shook her head softly, before walking toward the kitchen. Lewis felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. He wasn't sure if it was embarrassment, admiration, or something he didn't dare name. His food arrived shortly after, and as he ate, Nicole passed by occasionally to check on other tables. Each time she did, he felt a strange urge to say something clever, something that would make her pause, something that would make her look at him the way she looked at regular customers, with warmth rather than guarded politeness. He tried a few lines in his head. All of them sounded ridiculous. He kept silent. When he finished eating, Nicole walked over to gather his plate. "Good?" she asked. "Better than good," he replied. He paused, then added softly, "Thank you. For earlier. For being honest." Nicole looked at him thoughtfully. Honesty is easy when you're not trying to impress. Her words struck him harder than he expected. He nodded, unsure how to respond, and she returned to her duties. Louis remained seated longer than necessary. He didn't want to leave, not because of the food, not because of the environment, but because something in Nicole's presence made him feel grounded in a way he hadn't experienced in years. "Have a good day, sir." He paused. "Louis," he corrected gently. "Just Louis." She nodded once. "All right then. Have a good day, Louis." He stepped outside, and despite the warm air, he felt a surprising chill, the kind that came when something inside a person shifted ever so slightly. As he sat in his car, he realized the truth. He wanted to see her again, not to regain control, not to challenge her, not to fix anything. He simply wanted to understand the woman who spoke to him freely, without fear. The woman who saw through him. The woman who made him feel more human than he had in a long, long time. The sun had begun its slow slide downward when Nicole ended her shift that evening. The diner's once busy chatter had softened to a quiet lull, with only a few customers lingering over late plates. She untied her apron, folded it neatly, and placed it inside the storage cubby she always used. Her feet ached from hours of walking, but she brushed it off. Pain was familiar. Fatigue was familiar. What mattered was getting home on time to help her children finish their homework. She pushed open the back door, stepping into the warm afternoon air. The sky glowed with streaks of orange and gold, stretching its colors over the parking lot. Nicole walked toward her car. A simple sedan that had seen more years than she preferred to admit. She unlocked the driver's door and slid in, exhaling as if finally allowed to breathe on her own time. She turned the key. Nothing. She tried again. Still nothing. Nicole closed her eyes, leaned back in her seat, and let a tired laugh escape, not because anything was funny, but because frustration had become so routine it felt pointless to get angry. She popped the hood and stepped out of the car. The engine had been giving hints for weeks, but bills and responsibilities had taken priority. She raised the hood and stared at the engine. She wasn't a mechanic, but she knew enough to check the basics. Battery, cables, fluid levels, everything looked, well, old, but she couldn't pinpoint the problem. A quiet voice came from behind her. "Car trouble?" Nicole stiffened slightly. She knew that voice. She turned slowly, and there he was, Louis, standing near his car across the lot. He had changed into a more casual shirt, but he still carried himself with the same sharp presence. Only now his expression wasn't the confident mask he usually wore. It was softer, almost uncertain. Nicole raised an eyebrow. "You following me now?" Louis blinked, caught off guard. "What? No, I happened to be passing by." He was lying, and they both knew it, but Nicole didn't press him. She gestured toward the open hood. "If you're here, make yourself useful." Louis stepped closer, stopping a foot away from the engine. He stared at it with a seriousness that would have made someone believe he was examining a complicated financial document. Nicole crossed her arms. "Do you know anything about cars?" Louis paused. "They exist." Nicole snorted. "That's helpful." He gave a small, embarrassed smile. The kind of smile that didn't belong to the man who once strutted into the diner as if he owned the world. He looked almost human in that moment. Nicole leaned forward to check a cable. "It's been acting up for a while. Probably something simple." Louis hesitated before asking, "Do you need a ride?" He shook his head quickly. "It's not an inconvenience." Nicole studied him carefully. His posture wasn't arrogant, and his tone wasn't forced. For once, he wasn't trying to prove anything. He wasn't trying to dominate the moment or speak above her. He simply looked concerned. "All right," she said. "Let me try one more time." She slid into the driver's seat and turned the key, but the car remained silent. She exhaled sharply. "That settles it," she murmured. "I'll have to call the shop tomorrow." Louis stepped closer, resting his hand lightly against the car door. "Let me give you a ride home." Nicole looked up at him. Why? The question wasn't rude. It was honest. She had spent enough years around people to know that offers of help weren't always genuine. But Lewis didn't flinch. "Because you helped me today," he said quietly. "More than you realize." Nicole held his gaze for a few long seconds. She saw something different in him now. Not the pride. Not the superiority. Not the polished confidence that shattered when she spoke the truth. She saw a flicker of sincerity. "All right," she said finally, "but I'm not going to some mansion. Drop me at home, and that's it." Lewis nodded. "Of course." As they walked to his car, Nicole noticed something she hadn't expected. Lewis slowing his pace to match hers. It was a small gesture, but meaningful. Inside the car, he adjusted the air vents without asking her, taking a surprising amount of care to make sure she was comfortable. The drive was unusually quiet at first. Nicole looked out the window, watching familiar Tallahassee streets pass by. Small shops, church signs, students walking, families heading home. Lewis glanced at her occasionally, trying to think of words that didn't sound rehearsed. Finally, Nicole broke the silence. "You really came back to the diner today, just to eat?" He shook his head slightly. "No, I wanted to see you." The admission surprised her. She turned to him with a measured expression. "Why?" Lewis kept his eyes on the road. "Because you spoke to me like a person, not like a title." Nicole's shoulders softened, but only slightly. She wasn't ready to trust him, not fully, but she recognized honesty when she heard it. She gave him directions to her neighborhood, and he followed without question. When they arrived, he parked by the curb. "Thank you," she said as she stepped out. "For the ride." Lewis nodded. "Any time." Nicole closed the door gently, watching him for a moment before walking up the steps to her home. When she reached the porch, she paused and looked back. Lewis had not driven away yet. For a moment, two worlds, one built on simplicity, the other on wealth, sat quietly across a small stretch of pavement. And for the first time, neither felt as far apart as they once had. The next morning began quietly for Nicole. She had slept lightly after the unexpected ride home from Lewis. Her mind replayed the evening in small flashes, his cautious tone, his softened expression, the way he listened instead of filling the silence. She didn't know what to make of it. She wasn't used to wealthy men showing humility, especially not men who walked through the world with the kind of confidence Lewis carried. By the time she tied her apron and stepped onto the diner floor, she had convinced herself to let the moment go. She had too many responsibilities to get swept into confusion. Her shift passed with the usual flow, smiling at regulars, delivering plates, keeping peace between hungry customers. She didn't expect him to return, but he did. The bell above the door chimed shortly after noon, and when Nicole turned, Lewis stood there. He didn't walk in with his usual assertive stride. Instead, he paused at the entrance as if unsure whether he was welcome. Nicole approached the counter, maintaining her calm. "You're back." Lewis nodded. "Yes, I wanted to ask you something." Nicole raised a brow. "About waffles?" He chuckled softly, genuinely this time. "No, something else." She crossed her arms loosely, waiting. Lewis cleared his throat. "Are you free tomorrow evening?" Nicole blinked. "Why?" "There's a local event," he explained. "Frenchtown Rising. Music, food, community stalls. I thought you might enjoy it." The invitation caught her off guard. Frenchtown Rising wasn't some elite gathering or country club party. It was a community celebration rooted in the very neighborhood she grew up in, a place filled with soul, history, and pride. The fact that he knew about it surprised her even more. Nicole narrowed her eyes slightly. "You go to Frenchtown Rising?" "I haven't before," Lewis admitted. "But I'd like to." "Why with me?" He hesitated. "Because I feel like I'm learning something when I'm around you." Nicole looked at him carefully, weighing sincerity against ego. His posture was open. His words were steady. There was no arrogance hiding beneath them, only a man trying, perhaps for the first time, to meet someone where they were. After a long moment, she nodded. All right. Tomorrow evening. Relief washed over his face, subtle but noticeable. Thank you. The next day arrived warmer than usual, the sun casting a soft glow over Tallahassee as residents gathered along the streets of Frenchtown. Tents lined the sidewalks, filled with food vendors, handmade crafts, local art, and musicians warming up for the evening. Children darted between booths. Laughter echoed from every corner. Louis waited near the entrance, a little overdressed in a button-down shirt, looking out of place but trying to appear comfortable. Nicole approached wearing a simple pair of jeans and a fitted top, her hair tied back neatly. She moved with ease in this environment, the environment that shaped her, and for a moment Louis felt a new kind of admiration. You clean up nice, Nicole teased lightly as she reached him. Louis smiled. You look incredible. She gave him a small nod. Ready? As I'll ever be. They walked through the festival side by side. Nicole greeted familiar faces along the way, receiving warm hugs, cheerful waves, and the occasional "Hey girl, didn't expect to see you with company." She responded with amused eye rolls, and Louis found himself smiling more than he had in weeks. A live band started playing near the main stage. Drums, brass, energetic rhythms that filled the air with life. Nicole tapped her foot instinctively, letting the music settle into her body. Louis, meanwhile, stood stiffly, unsure how to blend in. You okay? She asked, amused. I'm observing, he said. You're stiff, she corrected. Relax. She grabbed his hand before he could protest, and pulled him toward the crowd gathering in front of the musicians. Louis stumbled at first, but caught himself, letting her lead. People moved with carefree joy around them, dancing, swaying, snapping fingers to the beat. Nicole began moving gently to the rhythm, her laughter carrying above the music. She nudged him lightly. Come on, Louis, just move. He tried, awkwardly at first, then a little better. Then finally, he let go just enough to follow the rhythm alongside her. Nicole laughed at the sight, not meanly, but with genuine delight. Louis laughed too, unable to hide how enjoyable it felt to let the moment guide him instead of control it. For the first time since their unusual meeting, they weren't Waitress and Billionaire. They weren't two worlds colliding. They were simply two people sharing a moment of joy. As the sun dipped and the lights came on across the festival, Louis glanced at Nicole. Something inside him softened further. She was radiant under the string lights, laughing freely, moving comfortably among her people, and he felt honored she let him witness it. Nicole looked back at him, catching his stare. Her smile faded into something gentler, more thoughtful. Louis chuckled. Don't tell anyone. And for a moment, everything felt simple, as if the divide between their lives had thinned, letting them stand on the same side of it, even just for one warm evening. The night after Frenchtown Rising lingered in Nicole's mind longer than she expected. She had laughed more freely than she had in months. She had seen Louis, a man who once strode into her diner full of ego, loosen up, stumble through dance steps and laugh at himself with surprising humility. But life had a way of grounding her quickly. By the next afternoon, the diner felt unusually tense. Conversations among staff were short. The owner paced near the kitchen, rubbing his forehead with the same stressed expression he wore during tax season. Nicole sensed something was wrong long before anyone spoke a word to her. She finished delivering plates to a booth and approached the counter. The owner finally stopped pacing long enough to meet her eyes. You all right? She asked gently. He sighed heavily. We've got a problem. Nicole's stomach tightened. What happened? Inspection results came in this morning, he said. We passed on everything except one issue. They want repairs done immediately, or we'll have to close for a few days. Nicole swallowed. The diner closing meant lost income, for everyone. She already lived on tight margins. Missing even a couple of days' pay would hit her hard. What kind of repairs? She asked, plumbing under the back sinks. He shook his head. It's costly. More than we can manage right now. Nicole felt her chest sink. She thought of groceries, school fees, and overdue utility statements sitting on her kitchen counter. She couldn't afford a break in work. Is there anything we can do? She asked softly. He shook his head again. Unless someone swings down a miracle. Not much. Nicole nodded in understanding. She wouldn't complain. She never did. But inside, her mind raced with anxiety she didn't dare show on her face. Hours passed, each minute heavier than the last. When her shift finally ended, she stepped outside and leaned against the wall, letting out a slow breath. The warm breeze brushed against her skin, but it didn't ease the weight pressing on her shoulders. She didn't see Lewis's car pull up until he parked beside her. He lowered the window. "Nicole?" She straightened, brushing her apron instinctively. "Hey, I wasn't expecting you." Lewis stepped out of the car, a concerned frown on his face. "You all right?" Nicole forced a small smile. "I'm fine. Just a long day." He didn't believe her. "You don't look fine." Nicole exhaled, debating whether to keep her thoughts to herself. She didn't want pity, least of all from a man like Lewis. But she also didn't have the energy to pretend. "The diner might close for repairs," she admitted quietly, "which means I'll lose hours. And pay. Things are already tight." Lewis's expression shifted, not with arrogance, not with the patronizing tone he once used, but with genuine concern. "How long would the repairs take?" he asked. "A few days," she answered. "Maybe a week." She shrugged. "It is what it is." Lewis took a step closer. "Nicole, you don't have to carry everything alone." She lifted her chin. "I do, actually. That's the reality." Her words weren't harsh. They were truthful, and Lewis felt the weight of them. He knew the privilege of never worrying about missed income, broken plumbing, or overdue bills. Nicole's world required strength in places he had never had to build strength of his own. "How much do the repairs cost?" he asked. Her eyes narrowed. "Lewis, I'm just asking," he insisted. "And I'm not telling you," she replied firmly. "You're not buying your way into anything here." Lewis blinked, stunned by her directness. Yet again. She wasn't rejecting him. She was protecting her dignity. "I didn't mean it like that," he said quietly. Nicole softened slightly. "I know, but I need to handle my life the way I always have. With my own effort." Her pride was not arrogance. It was survival. "All right," he said, "but let me help another way." Nicole folded her arms. "Such as?" He hesitated, searching for words that wouldn't offend her independence. "Connections," he said finally. "I know people who can get things done quicker. Faster inspections, faster repairs. No money, just strings I can pull." Nicole studied him carefully. He wasn't bragging. He wasn't dangling his wealth. He was offering a bridge between their two worlds, without asking her to give up hers. After a long moment, she nodded once. "If it speeds the process so everyone gets back to work." "Fine." Lewis's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Good. I'll make a call tonight." Nicole wasn't used to accepting help, and a piece of her still hesitated, but something about Lewis's tone, gentle, honest, told her this wasn't charity. It was partnership. As they stood there, the breeze brushing past them, silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, not heavy, just quiet understanding. "You didn't have to come by," she said softly. "I wanted to," he replied. "Why?" Lewis held her gaze. "Because I care." Nicole didn't respond right away. The warmth that spread across her chest was soft, cautious, unexpected. She wasn't ready to name it. Not yet. But she didn't walk away, and that said enough. The day after the crisis at the diner, the atmosphere felt strangely lighter. Repairs were already being coordinated thanks to Lewis's late-night phone calls, and though Nicole didn't want to admit it out loud, she felt relieved. She respected her independence, but she also recognized sincerity when it came without strings attached. Her shift ended earlier than usual, the owner encouraging everyone to go home while the repair team prepared to work through the evening. Nicole stepped outside, feeling the warm air settle around her as the sky shifted from daylight into a soft, glowing dusk. She walked toward her car out of habit before remembering it still needed attention. She sighed, turning to head toward the bus stop instead, only to see the familiar black car rolling into the lot. Lewis parked and stepped out, dressed in a simple shirt, sleeves rolled casually at the elbows. He didn't walk with his usual confident posture. Instead, he approached with a thoughtful expression, as though measuring every step with care. "You're here again," Nicole said, raising an eyebrow. "I said I'd check on you," Louis replied. "And I meant it." Nicole crossed her arms lightly. "You don't have to keep doing that." Louis shook his head. "I didn't come out of obligation." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right. So what brings you today?" He hesitated before answering. "I was hoping we could talk." Nicole motioned toward a small bench near the side of the diner where the employees sometimes took breaks. "Let's sit," she said. They walked over and sat side by side, the evening breeze brushing softly against them. Cars passed along the parkway, distant conversations floated from nearby shops, and the faint sound of music drifted from a home down the block. There was no pressure, no rush, just the two of them, sharing the same quiet space. Louis rested his hands on his knees. "I owe you honesty," he began. "You were right. That day at the diner, I talk like money solves everything. I didn't realize how one-sided my world is until you said it." Nicole looked ahead, not directly at him. "People get used to what life gives them. You got used to power. I got used to surviving." Her tone wasn't accusing. It was simply the truth. Louis nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about that a lot." Nicole tilted her head slightly. "And what did you come up with?" He let out a soft breath. "That I don't know much about anything outside my own circle. That what I thought was strength was actually distance. That maybe I've been missing something important." Nicole allowed herself a small smile. "Self-awareness looks good on you." Nicole shifted slightly to face him. "Why does it matter to you what I think?" Louis turned to her, meeting her eyes. "Because your words didn't come from pride or anger. They came from truth. And because I care about how you see me." Nicole held his gaze, surprised again by the vulnerability in his voice. "Careful," she murmured. "That sounds almost like you're trying to impress me." Louis gave a hesitant smile. "Failing miserably?" "A little." They both laughed softly. A moment passed before Nicole spoke again, her voice gentler this time. "I'm not trying to change you, Louis. I'm just asking you to see people beyond the labels you're used to." He looked down at his hands. "I want to. I want to be better than the man who walked into that diner thinking he owned the place." Nicole watched him carefully. The honesty in his expression was unmistakable. He wasn't pretending or performing. He wasn't reaching for charm or superiority. He was simply a man confronting himself. "You're trying," she said quietly. "That counts for something." He lifted his eyes to hers. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead. What keeps you going? Through everything?" Nicole inhaled deeply, letting the question settle. "My kids," she said softly. "My community. Knowing that even when life is heavy, I'm not alone. I have people who believe in me, people who depend on me. Purpose keeps me steady." Louis nodded, thoughtful. "I don't think I have that." "Not really." Nicole turned slightly toward him. "Then maybe you're searching for it." He looked at her, really looked at her, as if seeing something he hadn't allowed himself to see before. "Maybe I am," he said quietly. Silence lingered between them. Not awkward, not tense, but gentle, warm, and strangely comforting. Nicole exhaled, leaning slightly back against the bench. "Louis?" "Yes?" "You're different than I expected." He gave a slow smile. "So are you." Their eyes held for a moment longer than either of them intended. It wasn't romantic yet, not fully, but the beginning of something tender pulsed softly between them. A curiosity, a trust. A bridge slowly forming where there had once been nothing but distance. Nicole finally looked away, clearing her throat. "So, what now?" Louis considered her words carefully. "Now," he echoed. "Now we keep talking." Nicole nodded. "I can do that." The sun dipped lower, casting a soft glow over them. Two people from opposite worlds, sitting on an old bench outside a diner, discovering each other in a way neither expected. The divide between them wasn't gone, but it was shrinking. Conversation by conversation, moment by moment, truth by truth. The morning after the quiet conversation on the bench, Lewis walked into his office with a lightness he hadn't felt in years. Something about the previous evening stayed with him. The honesty, the calm exchange, the way Nicole's presence quieted parts of him he didn't even know were noisy. But peace was always short-lived in his world. Before he could settle at his desk, his assistant approached with a tense expression. "Sir, the numbers from the quarterly projections just came in. You need to see this." Lewis frowned. "Is it that bad?" The assistant hesitated. "It's not good." Lewis exhaled deeply and walked toward the conference room, already feeling the tight pull of stress creeping back into his chest. He opened the folder and scanned the documents quickly. Declining metrics, investor complaints, a report from a rival firm comparing his decisions to reckless optimism. He stiffened. He hadn't realized how deeply the criticism pierced until he felt his jaw clench. The assistant shifted nervously. "Sir, the board wants an emergency meeting." "Today?" "Of course they do," Lewis muttered. Just like that, the man Nicole saw the night before, the softer, reflective one, slipped behind the armor he spent years building. His voice sharpened. His shoulders tightened. His expression hardened into the familiar mask of control. "Prep the room," he said curtly, "and cancel everything else." Everything else. He didn't realize Nicole was included in that unspoken category. The meeting went worse than he expected. Investors questioned him aggressively. A rival CEO publicly mocked one of his decisions in an online interview. Board members subtly suggested stepping back from leadership roles. The comments struck at the very thing Lewis feared most, losing respect. By the time he left the room, his pride was bruised, his patience gone, and the weight of old insecurities pressed against him like a storm held behind a thin wall. He needed air. He needed silence. He needed to feel control again. Without thinking, he drove straight to the diner. Nicole was wiping down a booth when she saw him. Her expression lifted slightly, until she saw the tension on his face. "You all right?" she asked, approaching carefully. Lewis didn't answer right away. Instead, he sat at the counter, elbows on the surface, hands clasped tightly. Nicole stood across from him, waiting. "Talk to me." "I don't want to talk," he snapped. Her eyebrows rose. "Okay, but don't bring that tone in here." Lewis shut his eyes briefly, exhaling. It's been a day." Nicole leaned her hip against the counter, unbothered but alert. "You don't get to take your day out on me." He looked up sharply. "I'm not—" "You are," she said evenly. "And I don't care how stressful your meetings are, you treat me with respect." Those words should have grounded him. Instead, his stress twisted into defensiveness. "Nicole, not everything is a lesson," he snapped again. "Can I just sit here without being corrected?" The diner went quiet. Nicole didn't step back, didn't flinch, didn't soften her voice to soothe him. Lewis ran his hands through his hair, frustration rising. "I don't need boundaries right now. I need space." Nicole's eyes narrowed just slightly. "Then you should have stayed wherever you came from. Don't walk in here expecting me to absorb your temper." Her words weren't cruel. They were protective. She wasn't attacking him. She was defending herself. Lewis stood abruptly, the stool scraping the floor. You know what? Maybe this was a mistake. Nicole's expression stayed composed, but something inside her cooled. "If you're going to act like the man who taunted me on day one," she said softly, "then yes, it is a mistake." The words hit him harder than the boardroom insults, but instead of facing them, he retreated, falling into habits carved long before he ever met her. "I don't have time for this," he muttered, turning toward the exit. Nicole watched him leave without calling his name, without chasing him, without offering comfort she knew he wasn't ready to accept. As the bell above the door chimed behind him, she stood still, her chest tight with disappointment. She had hoped he'd changed. She had believed something in him was shifting, and she didn't know whether he would climb out again. Nicole tried to shake off the heaviness after Lewis stormed out of the diner. She finished her shift with practiced calm, smiling when needed, checking on customers and showing her usual patience with coworkers. But inside, something felt unsettled. She had seen him make progress. She had watched him loosen up at Frenchtown Rising, laugh at himself, reveal honesty on the bench, and show concern about her job situation. She wasn't expecting perfection, just consistency. Something to hold on to. And yet the moment pressure returned to his world, he slipped into the shadows of his old self. Short-tempered, defensive, distant. She didn't fault him for struggling. Everyone had bad days. But the way he spoke to her, the tone, the sharpness, brought back a truth she tried to ignore. Change was fragile. After closing the diner with the last coworker, Nicole walked home slowly. Her thoughts were tangled, circling the same question. Can someone like him truly change? She wanted to believe yes, but her life had taught her to tread carefully around disappointment. When she reached her front door, she noticed an envelope taped to it. Her name was printed neatly on the front. She removed it and walked inside before opening it. After setting her things down, she tore the top gently and pulled out a typed letter. Her eyes widened as she read. It was from a staffing agency she had applied to months ago, before life became too chaotic to follow up. They were offering her a position, not just any position, but a significantly better-paying job at an accounting office in Jacksonville. A stable role, daytime hours, full benefits. It felt unreal. Nicole sat slowly at the kitchen table, the letter trembling slightly in her hands. She read it 3 more times to make sure she wasn't imagining it. Higher pay, better schedule, a step forward, a chance to breathe again. She sank back in her chair, overwhelmed by the suddenness. She placed the paper down and covered her face with both hands, letting out a slow, shaky breath. She wasn't running from Tallahassee. But she also knew opportunities didn't appear every day. Not for women like her juggling bills, children, and long work hours. This could change everything. Still, a conflicting thought tugged in her chest. Lewis. Their connection was still new, unsteady, delicate, but real, and last night's fracture complicated things even more. She wasn't looking for him to rescue her life. She didn't need his money, but she had grown to appreciate the way he listened, the way he tried, the way he made her feel seen. Yet now, with this opportunity in her hands, the question was no longer whether he was changing. It was whether she could afford to wait for him to change. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Nicole closed her eyes before checking it. A message from Lewis. Nicole, I'm sorry about earlier. I shouldn't have snapped at you. She exhaled slowly, her heart tightening. Another message. I had a rough day, but that's no excuse. I shouldn't take it out on you. Nicole stared at the screen, unsure what to say. She placed the phone face down. She needed time to think. 20 minutes later, after helping her kids settle into their nighttime routine, she finally texted him back. Apology accepted. But we need to talk, he responded almost instantly. When? She hesitated. Not now. Not while emotions were raw. Not while the letter sat on her coffee table like a doorway into a different future. Tomorrow, she typed. I'll let you know the time. The next morning, she returned to the diner with the letter folded neatly inside her bag. She wasn't ready to tell anyone yet, not even her coworkers. She needed clarity first. Halfway through her shift, she found a quiet moment in the back storage room. She pulled the letter out again, reading the offer details silently. Every word felt like a lifeline and a burden. A coworker poked her head in. Everything okay? Nicole quickly folded the paper. Yeah, just a lot on my mind. Her coworker smiled sympathetically. If anyone can handle a lot, it's you. Nicole smiled back, though her thoughts were far heavier than the expression showed. By the end of the day, she knew she couldn't avoid the conversation with Lewis any longer. If she was going to consider leaving Tallahassee, she needed to face the truth of what this, whatever this was, meant. That evening she texted him. Meet me at Cascades Park. He replied, I'll be there. An hour later, Nicole arrived at the park first, sitting on a bench overlooking the gentle fountain streams. The sky had dimmed into a rose-tinted sunset. People strolled by, laughing softly, enjoying the peace of the evening. When Lewis arrived, he approached slowly, cautious in his steps. He sat beside her, not too close, not too far, just enough to show respect for whatever conversation was about to unfold. You said we needed to talk, he said quietly. Nicole nodded. We do. I got offered a new job, she said. In Jacksonville. Lewis's expression changed instantly, a flicker of shock, followed by something deeper. He tried to hide it, but couldn't. When would you have to leave? He asked. A few weeks, she answered. He looked away briefly, jaw tightening just enough for her to see the emotion he was trying desperately to control. You're thinking about taking it, he said softly. Nicole nodded. I am, Lewis swallowed. And what does that mean? For us? Nicole looked out over the water, her voice soft but steady. It means you're not the only one standing at a crossroads. Lewis barely slept the night after meeting Nicole in Cascades Park. Her words replayed in his mind with an intensity he couldn't control. I am thinking about taking it. You're not the only one standing at a crossroads. He had walked away from that conversation feeling as if the ground beneath him had shifted. Everything he didn't want to face was now staring him in the face. Nicole wasn't guaranteed. Nicole wasn't tied to Tallahassee. Nicole wasn't waiting for him to decide who he wanted to be. If he wanted a place in her life, he needed to earn it, not with money, and he wasn't sure he had enough of that yet. 2 days later, Lewis stood backstage at a high-profile investor gala. The room beyond the curtains buzzed with voices, the wealthiest names in the region, political figures, donors from all sectors. He'd given speeches at events like this dozens of times. But tonight was different. Tonight he felt the pressure of eyes he couldn't impress. Tonight he carried the fear of losing someone who mattered. Nicole had agreed to attend, though reluctantly. She didn't enjoy fancy settings, but she wanted to see how he presented himself when surrounded by his world. She arrived in a simple dress, nothing extravagant, and yet she drew eyes the moment she stepped inside. Lewis spotted her as he prepared to walk on stage. She stood near the back of the room, composed, graceful, not trying to blend in but not seeking attention either. Her presence steadied him, for a moment. Then the event coordinator nudged him. You're up. Good luck. Lewis inhaled deeply and stepped forward. The lights hit his face. Applause rippled through the room. He approached the podium and began his speech, but he wasn't ready. Not mentally, not emotionally, not spiritually. He intended to talk about the company's progress, projections, future goals. Standard business stuff, but stress, insecurity, and fear of losing Nicole churned inside him like a storm. His voice trembled slightly at first, then steadied, then trembled again. As many of you know, he began, our company has faced challenges recently. A few investors exchanged looks. Lewis continued, we've made mistakes. Calculated risks that didn't calculate. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. His board members frowned. Lewis pressed on, voice straining. But adversity builds character, and we... He stumbled over his words. His composure cracked. Someone in the audience whispered louder than intended, he's falling apart. Another muttered, this is embarrassing. Lewis felt the room closing in. All the years he spent building an image of perfection, crumbling in seconds. Sweat gathered along his hairline. His throat tightened. He glanced toward the back of the room. Not judging, not mocking, simply watching. Her calm gaze steadied him, but it also exposed him. He realized something painfully clear. He had no foundation outside his ego, and she could see it. When he opened his mouth again, the wrong words came out. I've been carrying everything alone because some people don't understand what leadership requires. Nicole stiffened. Lewis tried to correct himself. What I mean is, but it was too late. His attempt to recover only made the moment messier, more obvious. In desperation, he tried to sound confident, but it came out arrogant, condescending, even dismissive. He had lost the room. He had lost the mask. He had lost control. Silence spread across the gala like a shadow. Then whispers. Then judgment. His pride, his shield, shattered in front of hundreds of witnesses. Lewis stepped away from the podium abruptly, breath shaky. He didn't wait for applause. He didn't thank anyone. He simply walked off the stage and into the nearest hallway, the weight of humiliation pressing into his chest like stone. Nicole followed him quietly, giving him space at first. He leaned against the wall, rubbing his forehead, breathing unevenly. I ruined everything, he muttered. They'll talk about this for months, maybe years. Nicole stepped closer. Louis, he cut her off, voice cracking. I tried to hold it together. I tried to be the man I thought you wanted me to be. I tried to act like your words didn't get to me. But they did. Everything you said stayed with me. He turned toward her, eyes full of frustration, fear, and vulnerability. And when I thought about you leaving, he paused, swallowing hard. I panicked. I panicked so badly I destroyed the one thing I was supposed to be good at. Nicole softened, but didn't touch him. Not yet. Louis, she said gently, you didn't fall apart because of me. You fell apart because you're tired of pretending you're someone you're not. He looked at her, breath unsteady. You keep trying to impress people who don't care about your soul, she continued. But when you stand in front of me, I just want the truth. Louis's shoulders dropped. He looked broken, but also freed. His ego wasn't chipped. It wasn't bruised. It was shattered. And finally, he could rebuild without it. Nicole stepped closer, her voice softer now. This isn't the end. But you need to decide who you want to be, before you decide who you want beside you. Louis closed his eyes, inhaling deeply. For the first time in his adult life, he felt completely exposed, and oddly relieved. Because truth, even painful truth, was something he could finally hold on to. Louis woke the next morning with a heaviness in his chest that felt different from stress. This wasn't about numbers or projections or angry investors. This weight came from the memory of Nicole's voice echoing through the dim hallway of the gala. You're tired of pretending you're someone you're not. I just want the truth. He replayed the humiliation from the stage, the scattered whispers, the board members' discomfort, the mocking headlines already circulating online. His public image was bruised, maybe even fractured. But what hurt the most was simpler, quieter. He had disappointed the one person who saw him honestly. Louis sat up slowly, rubbing his face with both hands. He had spent years mastering control, curating success, shaping an identity that allowed no room for failure. Yet failure was exactly where he had landed. And strangely, he felt relieved, because for the first time there was nothing to perform, nothing to defend, nothing to hide behind. He reached for his phone and hovered over Nicole's number, but he stopped. Texting wasn't enough. Talking wasn't enough. If he wanted to repair what he had broken, not just with her, but within himself, he needed to show it. With a steady breath he stood, dressed plainly, and drove toward the diner. Nicole was wiping down the counter when he walked through the door. Her expression didn't change much. Not cold, not welcoming, just watchful. The breakfast crowd murmured softly, some recognizing him from headlines, others simply feeling the tension shift the air. Louis approached slowly, hands visible, posture open. He didn't take a seat immediately. He stood in front of her with the quiet sincerity of a man carrying no armor. "Nicole," he said softly. She set down the cloth and looked him in the eyes. "You came early." "I needed to," he replied. "I didn't want another hour to pass before telling you something important." She waited. No rescue. No softness he hadn't earned. Just a space she allowed him to fill with truth. Louis inhaled. "What happened last night was my fault. All of it. I panicked, and instead of grounding myself, I snapped into who I used to be. I hurt you. I embarrassed myself. And none of that was your responsibility to fix. This wasn't just a mistake," he continued. "It was a mirror, the kind I've avoided for years. And you held it up for me." Nicole's breath stilled. Louis continued, voice steady but vulnerable. "I acted like the man who walked into this diner and insulted you on our first day, a man I've been trying to leave behind. I slipped, and I'm sorry. Not the kind of sorry meant to smooth things over, not the kind I send in emails when deals go wrong. A real apology. From me. To you." Nicole didn't speak right away. She studied him, the unpolished tone, the quiet humility, the lack of excuses. Something real flickered beneath his words. "Sit," she finally said. Louis exhaled with relief and took the stool gently, as if grateful simply to be allowed. Nicole poured him a cup of coffee and set it in front of him without ceremony. People fall into old habits when they're scared, she said. That's human. Louis nodded. I am scared. She raised an eyebrow. Of what? He swallowed. Of losing you before I ever get the chance to really know you. Nicole's fingers paused around the coffee pot. He leaned closer, not arrogantly, not possessively, just honestly. I meant what I said that night on the bench. You make me see things I've avoided. You make me want to be better, not for show, not for investors, for myself. And for you? Nicole slowly set the pot down. Louis, I care about you too, but caring isn't the same as trusting. You have to earn that. I know, he whispered. I want to. Nicole's expression softened for the first time all morning. Then show me. Louis nodded slowly. I will. Starting now. He reached into his jacket pocket. Not for a check, not for a donation receipt, not for anything money could buy. Instead, he pulled out a folded piece of paper. I resigned from the leadership position on one of my boards, he said softly. Nicole blinked. Why? Because it fed the worst parts of me, he said. And I don't want to keep choosing environments that reward ego over growth. Nicole's breath caught. Louis looked at her, really looked at her. I'm not asking for forgiveness today. I'm asking for the chance to rebuild something honest. If you'll allow it. Nicole leaned on the counter, eyes warm but wise. Louis, I don't need perfection. I just need consistency. He nodded. Then that's what I'll give you. No more pretending. No more masks. All right, she said softly. Let's see where this goes. Louis took her hand with both of his, holding it gently, reverently. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to be humbled by something other than failure. Humbled by grace. Nicole closed the diner that evening, moving with her usual calm efficiency. But something inside her felt different. The conversation she had with Louis earlier replayed in her mind, not because of his apology, but because of its sincerity. She had heard apologies before, from people trying to smooth over discomfort or hide their pride. But Louis's voice, his tone, his vulnerability, it was real. When she stepped outside into the cool night air, she found him standing near the edge of the parking lot, hands in his pockets, head tilted slightly upward as if studying the sky. She approached slowly. You're still here? Louis turned toward her, offering a gentle, almost shy smile. I didn't want the day to end without asking if we could talk. Properly. Nicole leaned against the railing beside him. We talked earlier. Yes, he said softly, but that was me taking responsibility. This, he gestured between them. This is us. She looked at him carefully, giving him space to collect his thoughts. Louis stepped a little closer, not invading her space, just bridging the distance enough to show intention, not pressure. I've been thinking, he began quietly, about every moment we've shared. The diner, the festival, the conversations, even the arguments. Especially the arguments. Nicole folded her arms gently. What about them? They woke me up, he admitted. You woke me up. She raised an eyebrow. Louis. Let me say this, he whispered. Please. Nicole nodded once. He took a steady breath. All my life, I wrapped myself in things that made me look strong. Wealth, power, titles. Rooms where people adjusted themselves to please me. But none of it ever felt real. None of it ever reached me. His voice softened. You did. Nicole looked away for a moment, steadying her breath. Louis continued, You spoke to me with honesty. Not fear. Not admiration. Truth. You challenged me, pushed me, made me see myself without the filters I've been hiding behind for years. He paused, swallowing. When you said you might leave for Jacksonville, it hit me harder than anything that happened at the gala. Harder than the investors. Harder than the criticism. Because losing you, before I ever really had the chance to understand you, felt worse than losing everything else. Nicole looked up at him, her expression softer now, but guarded. Louis, I care about you, but I have responsibilities. I have my kids, my job, my life. I can't build everything around someone who's still figuring himself out." He nodded. "I know, and I'm not asking you to." "Then what are you asking?" she whispered. Lewis exhaled, letting the emotions settle before speaking. "I'm asking for a chance," he said. "Not to control anything. Not to dictate where you go or what decision you make. I'm asking for the chance to show you who I'm becoming. To grow beside you, not ahead of you. To be a man worthy of standing in your life, not overshadowing it." Nicole felt her heart tighten, not with fear but with unexpected warmth. He continued gently, "I'm not perfect. I'll stumble. I'll get overwhelmed. But I won't hide behind my ego anymore, and I won't take out my storms on you. I want to be someone you can depend on, someone steady, someone honest." They stood in silence, the soft hum of distant traffic blending with the quiet rhythm of their breaths. Nicole finally spoke, her voice low but unwavering. "Lewis, affection alone isn't enough for me. I need consistency. I need respect. I need someone who understands that love isn't about fixing each other. It's about standing beside each other." Lewis nodded slowly. "I understand. And I'm not ready to promise anything yet," she said gently. "My life has never allowed me to jump blindly. I think before I leap." "You should," he agreed softly. "You deserve that." Nicole stepped closer, her gaze calm, her presence warm. "But I won't lie to you either. I do care. And I do feel something with you. Something unexpected." Lewis's breath caught. Nicole continued, "I didn't expect any of this. I didn't expect you to walk into the diner and shake up my world. I didn't expect to see kindness under all that frustration. And I didn't expect to see your heart through the cracks." Lewis swallowed hard. "And what do you see now?" Nicole held his gaze gently. A man trying, a man learning, a man who still has flaws but isn't running from them. Her hand lifted slowly, lightly touching his arm, a soft gesture but meaningful. "I can meet you halfway. Not fully, not yet. But halfway." Lewis placed his hand over hers, not pressing, not gripping, just resting gently. "I'll take halfway," he whispered. "And I'll earn the rest." A faint smile tugged at Nicole's lips. "You better." They stood together for a moment, leaning into the quiet. Not lovers yet, not strangers. Something in between, something growing, something tender, something shaped by honesty rather than fantasy. For the first time, Lewis didn't feel the need to impress, and for the first time, Nicole let herself imagine the possibility of letting someone in without losing herself. This wasn't a fairy tale beginning. It was something better. A real connection, built brick by brick, truth by truth. The days that followed moved gently, like the slow shifting of seasons. Nothing dramatic, nothing rushed, just two people letting their walls down inch by inch. Lewis kept his promise. He didn't overwhelm Nicole. He didn't try to buy her comfort. He didn't demand her time or attention. Instead, he showed up in quieter, more meaningful ways. He stopped by the diner, not every day, not to linger in her space, but to offer a respectful nod, a warm smile, or a simple cup of coffee delivered with sincerity. When he sat at the counter, he listened more than he spoke. And when he did speak, he spoke with intention. Nicole noticed the difference. He was shedding his arrogance the way a tree sheds old bark, slowly, naturally, making room for growth she hadn't expected from him. She didn't rush her feelings. She didn't pretend she was ready for more than she could give, but she did let him in, halfway, just as she promised. One Saturday afternoon, the diner closed early for a private event. Nicole stepped outside to find Lewis leaning casually against his car, dressed simply, no sign of business armor. "You're here," she said, smiling before she realized it. "I wanted to ask if you're free for a walk," he replied. "Cascades Park." Nicole lifted an eyebrow. "You planning a speech again?" Lewis shook his head quickly. "Absolutely not. I'm retired from speeches for a while." She laughed, and he felt the sound settle warmly in his chest. "All right," she said. "Let's walk." Cascades Park buzzed gently with life. Families picnicked on the grass. Couples strolled the pathways. Children chased each other in bursts of joy. The fountain sprayed mist into the air, catching light from the late afternoon sun. They walked side by side, not touching, but close enough to feel the comfort of presence. Lewis glanced at her. "Can I ask something?" Nicole looked ahead. "Go on. You got the job offer in Jacksonville," he said carefully. "Are you still thinking about taking it?" Nicole gave a slow breath. "Yes and no." Lewis swallowed. "Meaning?" She stopped walking and turned to face him, her expression steady, thoughtful. "It's a good job, a real step up. Better income, more stability. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't tempting." Lewis nodded, bracing himself. "But," she added softly, "I'm not running away from something. I'm running toward the life I want. And I'm still deciding what that looks like." Her honesty didn't comfort him, but it grounded him. More importantly, it reminded him he wasn't in control of her path. Lewis nodded slowly. "I want you to choose what's best for you and your kids," he said. "Even if it takes you away from Tallahassee." Nicole's eyebrows lifted slightly, impressed. "That's surprisingly mature of you." He smiled shyly. Trying. They resumed walking. A few minutes later, Nicole nudged him lightly with her shoulder. "Now it's my turn to ask something." Lewis looked over. "Anything." Lewis slowed his steps. The question dug deeper than he expected. "I don't know," he admitted quietly. "For the first time in years." "I don't know," Nicole nodded. "That's not a bad place to be." He gave a small, thoughtful smile. "Where do you see yourself?" She looked toward the fountain, eyes soft. "Somewhere steady. Somewhere peaceful." Lewis's voice dropped. "Do you see me in that picture?" Nicole turned to him, her expression gentle. "I see you trying," she said. "And I see a man who's fighting old habits while learning new ways. I see someone who's changing because he wants to, not because he wants to impress me." Lewis breathed slowly, her words landing deeper than he anticipated. "And that," she added, "is why I haven't dismissed the idea of us." Lewis blinked. "You haven't?" "No," she said softly. "But I'm walking into this with clear eyes. If we do this, Lewis, I need respect. I need honesty. I need someone who stands with me, not above me." He nodded quickly. "You'll have that." She smiled faintly. "We'll see." Later that evening, Nicole invited him to a community gathering behind Bethel Baptist, a small food fundraiser the neighborhood hosted often. When they arrived, people recognized her instantly. Warm greetings, playful teasing, children tugging at her hands. She belonged here. Lewis stood a bit awkwardly at first, unsure where to fit in. Nicole noticed and walked him through introductions, guiding him without overshadowing him. Eventually he loosened up, laughing with a group of elders who insisted he try every homemade dish on the table. Nicole watched him with a warmth she didn't expect to feel yet. He wasn't pretending. He wasn't performing. He was trying, and that made all the difference. Hours later, he took her hand gently as they walked to her porch, a gesture she allowed, welcomed even. "I want to choose you," he said softly, "not with grand gestures, just with consistency." Nicole stepped closer. "Then show me, day by day." He nodded once, slow, steady, and Lewis, "Yes, if we're going to do this, you're stepping into my world, not dragging me into yours." Lewis smiled, eyes warm. "I like your world better." Nicole laughed softly, leaning into his chest. Not fully, but enough to let him know she wasn't running. In that moment, two worlds, one built on wealth, one built on community, finally found harmony. Not perfect, not rushed, just real. Respect is priceless. True wealth is character. Humility builds bridges that pride destroys, and love grows strongest where honesty lives. Darling viewers, if this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, please like this video, comment, "True wealth is character," and subscribe to Mr. John's Stories for more powerful love and life stories.